Why is there a harbor seal walking around the office?
Oh, that's our new CEO.
Come again?
Well, apparently they didn't order through Easy Cater for the board meeting, and when the food didn't arrive, they kind of lost focus. Next thing you know?
We have a seal as our CEO. Did I say something wrong?
No, she just wants a mackerel. Here you go.
Bad ideas happen when there's no food for the meeting. So make sure it's on time and as ordered from more than 80,000 restaurants. How? Easy Cater.
Thank you. I just got promoted.
Order 24/7 on easycater.com.
Odyssey now has hundreds of new exclusive music stations for you to discover your new summer soundtrack.
Get moving with worthy workouts for a cardio sesh fueled by today's top artists.
Hanging with your crew? Throw it back with Picnic Party for old school jams for your cookout.
Or sail away with Odyssey's new yacht rock station, Jugger Yacht.
There are hundreds of new exclusive stations to check out today.
For summer barbecues,
road trips,
or relaxing poolside.
For every mood, every interest, every passion. By Odyssey. Brought to you in part by Macy's and Geico.
It's Clint Sterner and the show on Sports Radio 610 with the 5 o'clock fire. Presented by Draeger, your full-service safety partner.
Ronna Show Ugley's out today. Wade Smith, Smitty is in. It's 5 o'clock, baby. You got through the day, man. You easing on back to the house. We got you. Here's where we sit. Right now, currently, there's 16 lawsuits filed on Deshaun Watson. Officially, 16 lawsuits filed on Deshaun Watson. That number has not changed over the last couple of days. I mean, we're up against it probably 48 hours. Hell, almost on the dot. We hadn't heard anything from either side of the Deshaun Watson situation. And here's what happens when you've got time, 2 days, 48 hours. You give folks time to process what's really happened. Go through all 16 lawsuits and with a fine-tooth comb and see what's going on. Go through all the different statements, all the leaked reports out there, and come to a more accurate, maybe a more thorough understanding of what's going on. And here's what I mean by that. It's a perfect example. Amy Dash is we've had her on, Sean Pendergast and Seth Payne had her on Monday morning. She's an official legal analyst for CBS Sports Radio. And this is where Amy Dash sits today on the Deshaun Watson situation.
And on the criminal side, if he's offered a plea deal, I think you take the plea deal. And I only say that because of the sheer volume of people. There's just too many people. There's too many women making similar accusations that could indicate some sort of a pattern or modus operandi, they call it, that would be hard to convince a jury otherwise, even if he is the victim of this large conspiracy that some people are saying and he's being set up or whatever. When you get into a court and you're before a jury, you're dealing with everyday people who maybe don't have a sophisticated understanding of the law. And so when you have this many people coming at you, I would always say if you've got a plea deal, you don't have a criminal record, you just take the plea deal because, and he might have to serve jail if he did that, by the way. It could go anywhere from like 2 years to 99 years. It's just such a broad spectrum. It depends how many charges he's indicted on, if any.
Smitty, Amy Dash said, settle the civil suits, open a checkbook, and if there's criminal, if there's anything criminal, take a plea. And then on the backside of that said that could mean jail time. That's where we're at, man. That's where we're at with this scenario. It is hard to believe that that's where we're at. But she says one road for Deshaun Watson is to settle, pay the money, and then plea out and possibly do the time.
Yeah, and she's not the only one saying that. You got Mike Florio saying that. There's a lot of people that are saying, Deshaun Watson's best course of action is to go ahead and settle right now. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. I wouldn't suggest that myself, but I'm not a lawyer. But if you hire Rusher Hardin to be your lawyer, whatever he decides and what he says is the right thing to do and the timing of when we're going to handle it, that's what I'd be listening to, and I think that's what Deshaun should be listening to. And when you look at what's been going on or not been going on over the past 48 hours, you had some haymakers thrown at each other over the past few days, where you had, Rusty Hardin's statement came out after there was, I think it was the lawsuits 15 and 16 went out on on 2 days ago. And then on that same day, Rusty Hardin's statement came out and the marketing manager, Bernie, his statements came out that day. And both of those, when you get up to 16, that's a substantial number of cases. And then when you have that response and the attempt to discredit plaintiff number 3 by the Hardin side, you saw those haymakers thrown. And then now you're seeing kind of a retreat. They've gone back into their corners, and they're looking forward to fight again. You saw Tony Busby respond to that statement by Rusty Hardin, and in that response, he kind of alluded to the fact that he's going to hope to be able to produce some information and evidence on Friday. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something from Tony Busby's side on Friday, and then it'll go back and forth again. But the more evidence that comes out, the sooner that the evidence comes out, the more we can try to get to the bottom of it, the quicker I think this can all get resolved.
It's just wild to think, Wade, that's where we're at with this deal, man. And I understand 16 is a big number. Those are a lot of accusations, and Deshaun could be guilty on all 16 fronts. He could be innocent on all 16 fronts. We don't know, but it's crazy to think what information is out there. There's legal analysts, professionals that look at this and go, man, write the check. A plea if it goes to criminal court and do the time if you so need. It's crazy to think that's where we're at.
5 o'clock fire.
The Houston Rockets at the trade deadline today. It was at 2:00 Central, the NBA trade deadline. The Houston Rockets made a deal. They sent Victor Oladipo to the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat send Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 draft pick swap back to Houston. Smitty, Oladipo's out, Bradley and Olynyk's in. Full rebuild in Houston.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, when I initially heard the trade, I wasn't too excited about it. After we talked to Adam Spillane, our Sports Radio 610 Rockets insider, it made it even worse because he straight up and down said that Avery Bradley is a guy who's a good defender, veteran guy. He says he doesn't even think he's going to be on the roster. He's going to end up getting released, bought out, and then so now you're left with Kelly Olynyk and a draft pick, and that draft pick is a pick swap. So you might move up 5 places in the draft. To me, that's not what when you thought about trading Victor Oladipo, you were thinking you're going to get a mid-first round pick. You could potentially get Duncan Robinson or somebody like that from the Miami Heat, and the deal didn't work out that way. So the Rockets got to be disappointed in that. They got to be disappointed in maybe the timing that they had with the James Harden trade, and it's costing them. Now they'll potentially have like 8 first-round picks from the Brooklyn Nets, and hopefully the Brooklyn Nets fall apart sooner than later because then they can start cashing in on those first-round draft picks. But as of right now, it's not looking too good for the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, look, he took the wind out of my sails as well, man. I looked at Avery Bradley. He's been with the Lakers and the Heat, both two franchises that have had a lot of success as of late. You know, he's an 11, 12-year vet in the NFL, in the NBA. And for me, I'm thinking, hey, man, older guy that's long in the tooth, had some experience around some championship caliber organizations, bring him in here and let him lead the way and kind of groom some of the young guys that don't know how to be a professional. They don't know how to attack practice. They don't know how to handle the full season on the court, and allow Avery Bradley to bring them along and be one of those veterans that brings them along. And those Spillane said, no, I don't even know if he's going to be around.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, you got young pieces like Porter and Wood that you want them to get their chemistry together. Those are pieces that you can start to build around. But having somebody on the roster like Avery Bradley, that kind of veteran leadership that can show them the way, that would have been a benefit. But like you said, Adam Spillane doesn't even look like that's a guy that's going to hang around. But the Rockets, they're just not in a good spot right now. The good thing that they do have going for them, I think, is that I like Steven Stiles and what he brings to the table as a coach, the way he's been able to handle all of these just unorthodox and janky situations that he's found himself in since he's become the head coach of the Houston Rockets.
5 o'clock fire.
Got good news on the Astros front. Maybe some folks out there knew this already, but it appears that the Astros have found their replacement in the lineup for George Springer. Obviously, George was great, and that leadoff spot in the lineup was maybe up for grabs. And I think the only reason it was ever even a conversation is because Altuve possibly wasn't as comfortable in the leadoff spot as he was in the middle of the lineup. Well, it appears that's not the case. Dusty Baker, the manager for the Houston Astros, spoke about that leadoff position today.
No, it's still a work in progress, but I'm leaning towards Altuve. I mean, you can see our lineup the last few days. You know, he's pretty damn good. You know, I mean, this guy could get 700 at-bats, and that equates out to like 250 hits. You know what I mean? That's a lot of hits.
700 at bats, 250 hits. That beats the hell out of the Miles Straw option. Were you ever buying into the Miles Straw as a leadoff for the Astros?
Not one bit. And I think anybody that was buying that option were very – they had high hopes. And some people have high hopes in the world and are very positive. And I'm usually an optimist in any and all situations, but I didn't really have much optimism for Miles Straw being a leadoff hitter for the Houston Astros. Get back in that 9 hole, Speedy. Get back in that 9 hole, Speedy.
5 o'clock fire.
John Heyman of MLB Network, he dropped a tweet a little earlier about Carlos Correa. As you know, the Astros offered Carlos Correa $120 over 6 years. I believe it was yesterday. Well, John Heyman says the Correa offer of $120 over 6 years didn't even spark dialogue with the Astros. Looks almost certain to become a free agent at this point. We had Robert Flores of MLB Network on last segment, and we asked him about Correa. This is what he had to say.
Carlos Correa is a supreme talent. He is a cornerstone franchise-type player. He's also had some injury history. Is Carlos Correa a $30 million player? I think you could make the argument that he is. I think Carlos Correa hits free agency. I think that's just something that has, appealed to him, and that's just something that I've always thought.
You hope the Astros can come to terms with Carlos Correa by what is it, next Thursday?
Yeah.
But according to Heyman and according to Robert Flores, it didn't sound like that's likely to happen.
Well, if you got a situation where you're trying to debate, are you a $30 million guy or not yet, and the only offer on the table is a $20 million, you're not on the same page. You're not in the same area of actually getting the deal done. So. Of course, the Astros, if they want to get something done in the near future, they're going to have to bring that number up. And they got to hope that Correa is not willing to bet on himself, per se, and just play this year out and then hit the free agent market and hit him over the head.
Boy, you got to think if he hits the free agent market, they're going to be throwing big money at him. Obviously, the question that Robert Flores asked is he a $30 million a year guy? Fernando Tatis, the way he did his math, Fernando Tatis was upwards of $30 million. You got to think Carlos Correa is. And if he stacks a 2021 on top of what he did in 2020 that's even similar over a full season, good gosh. I mean, you got to think everybody's going to be after him.
Yeah, think about it. If he plays, if he doesn't miss time, his talent tells you he's a $30 million a year guy.
Sure.
The only thing that's holding you back from giving that and confirming that with an offer, if you're the Astros, is the time that he's missed and the type of injuries that he's had. And that's understandable. I completely understand why you don't want to necessarily – pay him top of a market deals when you haven't had that guy playing 90-95% of games each and every year. You have a guy that's sometimes 60%, 65% of games. That's not enough to give you top of the market. But I think there's going to be teams outside of Houston that say to themselves, we're going to bet on this guy. He's still young. He's only 26 years old. We think we can get out of him what maybe he didn't put forward as far as physically staying healthy, what went down when he was in Houston. So I think there'll be multiple teams that are on him, and $30 million a year, I think that's a number that he can get outside of Houston.
That's Wade Smith. I'm Clint Sterner. You're listening to Sports Radio 610, Houston's sports leader. The Deshaun Watson saga continues. The lawsuits are at 16 right now. Will Deshaun Watson settle? That's a big question. Other than will he be traded, will he settle with all these different lawsuits, I think is a big question that's out there. Smitty and I will discuss that next.
Sports Radio 610 presents Clint Sterner and the Show.
Ron the Show Hughley is out. Wade Smith is in, 12-year NFL vet. Smitty, there's a couple of questions surrounding the Deshaun Watson saga right now. This Deshaun Watson situation is ugly. It's getting uglier. There's two of them, right? I mean, how does this impact the Texans' ability to trade him? The value associated with that. The other one is should he settle? I hear that those two questions discussed pretty often over the last couple of days. Here's the deal, and I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday about Deshaun Watson and should he settle. I want to make a couple of things clear. I don't know who's guilty and who's not guilty. We're not making excuses for anybody. We're simply discussing what we know, the information that we have at our fingertips. We know Deshaun Watson has had 16 lawsuits filed against him for some degree of sexual assault by 16 different women. That number is rumored to potentially grow to 22 to 24 in the future. We don't know if it's going to grow that big or not. We don't know if it's going to stop at 16. We know right now 48 hours have gone by and it's been awfully quiet, okay? But should Deshaun Watson settle? I say heck no, right? We discussed this yesterday. Mike Florio was asked about a particular part of Deshaun Watson settling, and it's what I mentioned yesterday being the big part, is if Deshaun Watson were to settle and just open a checkbook and start writing checks without furthering the investigation and without getting to the bottom of all 16, guilty or not guilty, getting to the bottom of all 16, I think is the best interest of Deshaun Watson. Now, if he were to open that checkbook and start writing checks and just settle, the potential of other lawsuits, I think, would be tremendous. I think other lawsuits would come out of the woodworks. Mike Florio was asked specifically about the potential of other lawsuits if Deshaun Watson were to settle.
The broader point here is Deshaun Watson able to identify the universe of people who potentially would sue him? Like, how many are out there? There's 24. How many are there? Are there 240? What? Like, this isn't, for example, like a case where you've got a store, like a Walmart, and people walk in and slip and fall and claim they got injured somehow. This should be a fairly finite group of individuals. And at some point, you should be able to get to the point where you know there is no one else. And I think that's part of the effort that the lawyers would have to undertake before you get to a conclusion here. If I'm Deshaun Watson and I'm going to agree to this, I need to know that there's no one else. But at some level, Deshaun Watson is the one who would know whether or not there's anyone else. And if there's so many that he's lost track, that underscores the problem.
Well, here's the deal is that we're dealing with a wide spectrum here of any kind of contact that Deshaun Watson's had with a female over the last 4 years of him being a professional. We don't know to what degree the 16 lawsuits that are out there, we don't know to what degree they are true or they're false. We have no idea at this point in time. So when Mike Florio says that Deshaun Watson should be able to put a finite number on it, I think that's inaccurate. I think it'd be very difficult for a professional athlete that's been a professional athlete for 4 years to put a number on or a cap on or be sure of the number or whether it's one more or 15 more in the future that could possibly come up when we're dealing with the wide spectrum of this could be anywhere from him being set up to him being guilty of the worst sexual assault. It could be that spectrum anywhere, and anybody that Deshaun Watson came across over 4 years of his career could be a potential lawsuit in the future. And all I'm saying is if he opens his checkbook and starts writing checks now to any and everybody that's filed a lawsuit,
right,
that could be big problems for Deshaun moving forward.
Yeah, it seems like to me that Florio is coming from the perspective of as if Deshaun for sure did something wrong. So he should know how many people that he wronged. But if that's not the case, if he didn't do something wrong, then he might not have any clue how many people are going to come out and say something against him. And so right now, I think it's kind of foolish it's like, what's the name of that movie, Fools Rush In? It's foolish to rush in right now and make a quick decision on settling, right now, because, certain people like Florio or Amy Dash or anybody that says right now that's the best course of action. The best thing for you to do is listen to your attorney that's considered the best in the great state of Texas and one of the best in the country, and see how he approaches the deal and take your time. I think you have to allow the thing go its due course. I think it gets easier for other organizations in the NFL. They would love it if Deshaun decided to go ahead and settle and get this out the way, because then they can go ahead and start conducting business. But Deshaun's first priority is to protect himself and protect his name. That's what he said. And it's Tony Busby's priority to make sure that he gets the case of his clients heard, and if there's some type of retribution to be had, that he gets it. And so there's going to be both sides putting their best foot forward to make their clients come out of this the best way that they possible. And it's a bad situation all the way around. But the sheer number of, hey, the fact that you don't know how many massage therapists that you've had over a certain period of time, we don't know if the stuff matches up or not. Some of the stuff that's put in the lawsuits is not necessarily accurate. So if Deshaun is looking back at his DMs and all that type of stuff, we don't know if the stuff matches up or not. And and based off of Rusty Hardin, the type of lawyer that he is, and we heard lawyer Sam say that earlier on in the loop, they might know who all these ladies are, but they put it out there that Tony Busby wouldn't reveal their names to them confidentially because they're both trying to win this battle in the court of public opinion. So, they put that out there to let it be known, Tony Busby is holding back these ladies' names to put doubt in the mind of people that are listening to that. That's a strategy that really good lawyers do. They put doubt into the mind, or they plant things in the heads of people that are listening, because the people that are listening and the people that are reading up on this story, eventually those become the ones that make the judgment if it goes to court.
Yeah, it seems to me, Smitty, like it's like to think that Deshaun Watson could put a cap on what would happen moving forward and be able to predict who would or wouldn't file another lawsuit, or if another lawsuit would or wouldn't be filed. I think that would be very, very, very difficult to do. So I don't know. I just think with Mike Florio suggesting that Deshaun not being able to put a cap on that, I don't know how fair that is in a sense of knowing what, predicting the future and knowing what could happen moving forward. I'm Clint Sterner. That's Wade Smith, 12-year NFL vet. You're listening to Sports Radio 610, Houston sports leader. Nick Caserio restructured a contract yesterday. I worded it as more of a reworked contract yesterday, which was Whitney Merciless's deal. This was Nick Caserio's finest moment as a Texans GM, in my opinion, Smitty. He reworked that contract in a way that they're tied to Whitney Merciless for 1 year. They'll get out of the contract in 2022. They can get out of the contract in 2023 if they so choose. They're tied to Whitney Merciless for 1 more year. And with the change from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3 defensive front, that means Whitney Merciless is going to have to put his hand in the dirt and try his hand at defensive end and truly be a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end. Surely he's not moving to Sam linebacker and going to play the stand-up linebacker position, right?
I would highly doubt that, because we saw him playing off the ball and trying to cover people. He struggled with that part of his game.
Yeah.
And he's best when he's going forward. When he played in college at Illinois, that's what he did. He put his hand in the dirt, and he was a pass rusher. So maybe he'll be able to harken back to what it was like to put your hand in the dirt every play and get after the quarterback. He still, before last year, he was one of the best outside linebackers in the NFL at setting the edge. Like he did that like it was nothing. Last year he took a huge step back on that, and we don't know why that was. Is it, did he fall off the shelf because of age? He's actually not that old. So you think to yourself, is this something that has to do with COVID? And did he have to recover from something, or was it something that have to do with the fact that he was away from the facility all the time and he didn't handle that part as well as we would have liked? But the fact that they were able to get him to a deal to where his cap number went from 12 to 8, and you have a guy that is a veteran and is respected in the locker room, it's the best out of a bad situation that Nick Caserio could do, and you got to respect him for making that happen and allowing to rework that contract on both sides. Whitney Merciless, because he had a lot of leverage in the situation, and the Texans for getting him to make it happen.
I think there's several guys that when this transition from a 3-4 to a 4-3 are going to have to put their hand in the dirt. And Jonathan Grenard's one of them, that last year rookie out of Florida. Whitney Merciless is one of them, obviously. Where does Jacob Martin land? Is he a guy that's got enough twitch and enough speed to play that Sam backer position, or is he a third down, hand in the dirt defensive end? We'll see what happens, but that shift from a 3-4 front to a 4-3 front is going to cause some problems for some guys. Hell, who knows? It may be exactly what some of these players need, and they end up being a better defensive end than they are an outside linebacker. We'll see. Astros manager Dusty Baker, he spoke this morning, or really this afternoon, and he appears to have found the replacement for George Springer. We'll explain next.
For whatever reason, Clint, you just have this swag about you, brother. There is just something there that any person of any color, of any demographic, of anything can relate to.
Sports Radio 610 presents Clint Sterner and the Show.
Ron, the show, Ugley's out. My man Wade Smith, 12-year NFL vet, is in once again. Thank you for joining us, H-Town. Dusty Baker, the Astros manager, he spoke before we came on air today, and it looks like they're leaning towards one specific player to replace George Springer in the lineup. Here's Astros manager Dusty Baker on that one spot in the lineup.
No, it's still a work in progress, but I'm leaning towards Altuve. I mean, you can see our lineup the last few days. He's pretty damn good. This guy could get 700 at-bats, and that equates out to like 250 hits. You know what I mean? That's a lot of hits.
Pretty damn good. This guy's pretty damn good. 700 plate appearances will give you 250 hits. That's a better conversation, a little easier conversation to have than Miles Straw and talking about his speed in the leadoff position, ain't it?
Yeah, when you look at Miles Straw, you say to yourself, all right, this guy is so fast, you would love it if he could be a contact guy that could get on base because he would cause hell for pitchers that would have to deal with him on base. But at the same time, he hasn't shown that he's that type of player, which you have seen out of Altuve, that he's been in the leadoff role before in his career, and he is a guy that you would think, but him being a veteran and being somebody that understands what his new role is going to be, that he would be able to get back on track from what you saw out of him last season, where he was swinging at stuff that and he tends to swing at stuff out of strike zone anyway and make good contact, but he was off balance a lot last year. He was, like you said, he swing out of his shoes all the time, and he wasn't necessarily trying to take the ball where the ball wanted to go. I would expect Altuve to adjust his approach because of how important that role of being the leadoff hitter is, and then get back on track to doing things the way he did them back when he was a leadoff hitter before.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing for Altuve. Obviously, it's not going from the middle of the lineup or going from anywhere other than the leadoff to the leadoff. I don't think that's a big issue for him. The thing for him is, how does he rebound from last year, right? I mean, clearly, he self-admittedly, he's talked about how difficult last year was, whether that's dealing with the scandal, dealing with COVID-19, dealing with the personal issues that he had, family issues that he had off the field. That last year was just a really, really tough year. I think this boils down to, can he rebound in a way to be in a better mental place to be the best leadoff hitter that he can be to start the season?
Yeah, and I tell you what, man, that mental hurdle and that mental jump that he's going to have to make, it'll be interesting to see how much he's going to have to deal with from the fans in opposing stadiums throughout the season, because last year there were no fans in the stands and he struggled. But we were all expecting that the Astros in general were going to take a lot of hell, a lot of heat when they went to the various stadiums around the league. We're getting news now that some stadiums, the Astros are going to be at 50% capacity. I'm sure there's going to be some stadiums around the country that are at 50, 75, 100% capacity. How do you think that the Astros are going to what type of energy are you expecting them to get from the fans in other cities, and then how do you think Altuve will be able to respond from that?
Yeah, I think there's already reports of, I didn't watch the videos that were posted, but there's already reports of them getting booed, obviously, in spring training. And, I think that'll be a major problem. But Smitty, you and I have talked about this before, man. I mean, professional athletes, I think the one of a handful of things that you just have to be able to do as a professional athlete is compartmentalize. I mean, you can't. You're going to have a hard time any sport, playing if fans booing, if that affects your play, or if you can't sleep at night because you're worried about the perception and what the fans are going to do and what the other players around Major League Baseball think of you. I mean, look, there's going to get to a point where you're just labeled as a mentally weak individual, as a mentally weak player, versus a guy that's struggling with some of these things. So I think their ability to compartmentalize has got to be really, really strong. And that's the deal with all professional athletes. And this is precisely why.
Yeah, and I think that directly goes to Altuve as well. I don't think this is Altuve's first time that he's had any struggles away from the field or away from the diamond. Right. And so, but he's played at a very high level for a very long time. You don't have great players that are only great because everything that's going on at home is right, or everything that's going on in the world of sports is right. And so that's why they're able to play at a high level. Being able to compartmentalize things and being able to get on the diamond or get on the court or get on the field and ply your trade and be great at that, that's something that players that do it for a long period of time, they have that down to a T. And so I would expect Altuve to not allow that last season and any outside noise to distract him from doing what the Astros need him to do as a leadoff hitter for this season.
I tell you, we had Robert Flores on from host on MLB Network. He joined us last hour. And by the way, if you want to listen to that, you can hit that radio.com rewind app and go back and catch it. Robert Flores is always money. Houston's own Robert Flores. He caught us up on two things of late. One, Lance McCullers. Yesterday, Lance McCullers and the Astros agreed to an extension, a 5-year extension worth $85 million, and it ties Lance McCullers to the Astros for six years. And we asked Robert Flores about Lance McCullers and what it means that he's for the pretty much 6 years going to be an Astro.
I think it's a good move for McCullers and the Astros. He looked very good returning last season. He's looked excellent this spring. I think at the very least you're talking about at a number 2 starter, maybe a 1A, never afraid of the moment, closing out Game 7 of the ALCS in 2017, starting Game 7 of a World Series in 2017. So he's been there. He's pitched in some big moments, and the moment's never been too big. So I think moving forward, you feel good that McCullers is going to be locked up with the Astros.
I liked it. Robert Flores mentioned that when you look at McCullers, being a number 2 starter is the floor when you pay a guy 6 years. 5 years, $85 million. You've seen what you've seen from McCullers. No moment's too big. This is a guy that at the very least should be your number 2 starter in a rotation with again on the high side could be a big time ace in this league.
Yeah, man, I get excited when guys like Robert Flores get excited about certain guys being signed to the roster. And he talked about how Lance McCullers pitched well last year and that he's pitching excellently so far in spring training. Man, that is a great sign for Lance McCullers. It's a great sign for the Houston Astros. And you get a guy that, like Robert Flores mentioned, he's a 2 at worst, maybe a 1A. In your rotation, and he's getting paid $17 million a year. I think that's a very reasonable ticket price for somebody like Lance McCullers, what he's going to bring to you actually on the diamond, but then what else he also brings to you in the clubhouse. He's been one of those guys that you've seen his maturation throughout his time with the team. He's always been one of those guys that is a core guy in the clubhouse, and so now you keep him in the fold. Now he's still in the city. He'll be able to continue to give back like he does all the time, and so I'm excited for Lance and excited for the Houston Astros.
Yeah, another player that's been pretty exciting as of late is Carlos Correa, and it was reported yesterday that the Astros offered him a 6-year, $120 million deal, which, according to John Heyman of MLB Network, it didn't even really move the needle of Carlos Correa. It didn't even start conversations at the end of the day, and it doesn't look like the Astros and Carlos Correa are going to be able to reach a deal. Looks like if they don't reach a deal, he will obviously be a free agent at the end of the year, 26-year-old free agent. We also asked Robert Flores of MLB Network. We asked him his thoughts on Carlos Correa.
Carlos Correa is a supreme talent. He is a cornerstone franchise-type player. He's also had some injury history. Is Carlos Correa a $30 million player? I think you could make the argument that he is. I think Carlos Correa hits free agency. I think that's just something that has, appealed to him, and that's just something that I've always thought.
If he hits free agency, Smitty, I don't think it's a good thing for the Astros.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to pay a premium. There's gonna be multiple teams that are gonna be looking to get Carlos Correa's services. You expect him to have a big year this year. It's not like he's the only bat in the lineup, so people are not going to be able to pitch around Carlos Correa. That's going to help his numbers. That's going to help his production to where once he becomes the free agent, he's going to be one of those guys that's around that $30 million a year number. And based off of what the Astros are offering now, at 20, they're far apart. And so I don't know if they'll be able to get close enough to where Carlos Correa would say, you know what, I want to come home. So there has been things shown in the past that Jim Crane is willing to pay a big ticket for a big ticket item, one of those players that's really going to help your team get over the top. I don't know in this case if that's going to go down, and I could see Carlos Correa going elsewhere in free agency.
Smitty, I'm gonna beat this drum until Correa's either given a long-term deal or he leaves Houston. I don't see how you let this guy get out of town. I mean, you can take what's happened over the last couple of months and as an example of how powerful this guy. Like, yeah, Springer left. Mm-hmm. I mean, Springer's a great player, and he left. And I don't want to speak for everybody because I mean obviously I'm just an Astros fan. But when Springer left, it was a lot less painful than one first thought it would be when Springer left and he was no longer an Astro. And that was for one. Yeah, there's a lot of talent on the team. Look, the lineup is they're going to miss Springer, but this lineup is awfully powerful and can afford for a player like that to leave in free agency.
Right.
But the real reason that you're not going to miss Springer is because Correa proved to not only be able to produce at the plate, but he also proved to be the leader in the clubhouse, the leader on the field, the face of the organization. And that's when Carlos Correa is more than just a really good player or a really good hitter. When he allows your organization to weather the storm of one of the greatest Astros to ever leave the organization, you weather that storm a lot better than you would without him. That's more value to this dude.
Yeah.
Right? Framber Valdez is a really good pitcher who Robert Flores said he expects him to be a star in this league.
Yeah.
If Carlos Correa can keep him level-headed and keep him in the moment and really get him to mature, Carlos Correa's value goes through the roof.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I know when George Springer left, at the same time, people thought Mark Brantley was leaving too. Everybody thought that they were going to Toronto. So getting Brantley back, in addition to the potential of holding on to Carlos Correa, I think that would be huge for the franchise going forward. It's definitely huge for this season because Brantley is back. But Carlos Correa, what he's been able to provide in leadership, something that you didn't necessarily think was the case with him early on in his career, him going through that maturation process, you want to reap the benefits of that if you're the Astros organization because, like you said, his ability to pull Framber Valdez aside and get his head right and then him go out there and pitch at a high level, Carlos Correa producing like he produced in the postseason and throughout the regular season, that type of Carlos Correa and being healthy, you want that guy's services for as long as possible. We'll see if they'll be able to get something done. But like Roflo said, the likelihood of it happening if he hits free agency is not very good.
That's Wade Smith. I'm Clint Sterner. You're listening to Sports Radio 610, Houston's sports leader. Here's the latest on the Deshaun Watson trade front, right? One of the big questions is the trade value for Deshaun, the trade market for Deshaun. Will the trade ever happen for Deshaun? Well, Jeff Darlington of ESPN and the whole crew today, they discussed it. But here's Jeff Darlington on the latest on the Deshaun Watson trade possibilities.
Most teams are waiting to see what happens. Now, before all of this came to light, I spoke to several executives who simply believed that Deshaun Watson, a week before the draft, would become available. And they did say that Nick Caserio, the GM of the Texans, has remained firm that he is not trading Watson, while everyone continues, like I said, to believe that that will eventually happen. Now, ultimately, the pause button has been hit. The pause button has been hit by the Houston Texans, by any interested party, because there is nobody who is going to mortgage their future with such a cloud hanging over right now Deshaun Watson. The only hope here is that perhaps we get some clarity, some conclusiveness before the NFL draft. But again, given the legal system, given how little time we have before the draft, that feels like a lot to ask.
Smitty, I couldn't disagree more. I think
Which part of it?
Well, either of it. Other teams hitting the pause button or the Texans hitting the pause button. I don't think the Texans were ever not fielding calls on Deshaun Watson.
Right.
And they're damn sure not turning calls away right now at this moment, right? I mean, now there would be more of a reason now than ever before to field calls on Deshaun Watson at this point in time. And I think other organizations, given the fact that the perception is you're going to be able to possibly get him for a discount, a discounted rate, I think that's going to drive teams to be at least interested. So, and then look, I know how do we interpret the pause word, right? I mean, to me that means everybody's we're done, we're stopping for right now until this thing gets resolved. I just don't think that's the case. I think that the conversations continue. I think the offers continue, and the possibility continues with Deshaun Watson right now. There's a lot of unknown around Deshaun Watson. Again, I don't know if he's guilty or not. Doesn't look good for him, obviously. But to think that these conversations aren't continuing to be had, I just ain't buying it.
Yeah, I agree with you that all along that Nick Caserio was taking in offers. Now, he wasn't responding back to those offers, but you have to think that Nick Caserio had a number in his head that he said to himself, X amount of first-round picks, X amount of second-round picks, X amount of players. That would be something that I would say, all right, let's get this party started. Let's actually discuss this and work this out and try to make it happen, because that's what any prudent GM would do. And so, and that's what he strikes me as a prudent GM. Now, as far as them pausing and things of that nature, I don't expect teams right now to be reaching out to Nick Caserio, making phone calls, and still making offers at this point. I think what they're doing right now is they're figuring out what can we, as time passes and things start to die down, because like you said, of the past 48 hours, you haven't heard anything. You don't know how many more cases are going to come out. You don't know when people are going to actually start thinking about this as the first thing that comes in their mind when they're looking at sports right now. But in the meantime, during this pause, they'll be putting together their package that's a little bit less than what it's not that 93 gas, it's that 89 gas, it's not that premium, it's that plus. But I'm gonna offer him that plus because I'm gonna take this problem off your hand. You know you got a problem. You know that he's a guy that doesn't want to be there. You know that right now, you gotta think about it. The fan base, I don't think they mind Deshaun Watson getting traded right now. They're ready to rid themselves of the problem as well. They know that he doesn't want to be here. He's got all these issues surrounding him, and so teams are going to take advantage of that. They're going to try to leverage that to get a better deal than what they was really willing to give away earlier. But it can't be peanuts, and Nick Caserio can't accept peanuts. And that goes earlier to what you said earlier this week when you were saying you might want to wait until next year around this time because you can get the best possible deal. If they're offering peanuts over the next couple of months, that's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, Smitty, regardless of what they're offering, that's what my point is. They're not hitting the pause button. I'm not saying that the pause button means they're calling or they're not calling. I'm simply saying that right now, with the potential of Deshaun Watson going at a discounted rate, I think there's more teams would be interested. And now, whether they're picking the phone up or not, I don't know. But if me and you own the 49ers, and
you're still discussing ways to figure out how to get Deshaun Watson.
Me and Smitty are talking about this thing. We ain't hit no pause button. We may not be calling Nick Caserio and leaving messages,
but I think that's what Darlington is saying, because Darlington which basically was saying is this entire time teams have been calling the Texans every day. Hey, we got this offer for Deshaun Watson, and Nick Caserio was playing coy like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I think now the pause, what he's talking about is, first of all, the Texans are trying to wait and see what happens with this, and these other teams are trying to wait and see what happens with it, waiting for what happens with the NFL investigation. But before the draft pops off, there's going to be somebody to pick up that phone, and so at that point you got to figure out, Nick Caserio, is this the time to go ahead and make that move, or do we continue to hold on him and see how things play out?
That's Wade Smith. I'm Clint Sterner. You're listening to Sports Radio 610. Smitty, U of H, man. March Madness is rocking and rolling. U of H, the Cougs are obviously rocking and rolling. Saturday night, they got a game against an 11-seed Syracuse team that, look, they're an 11 seed. The Cougars will be, I don't know. What's that line at right now, T? That line is I mean, I would imagine that they're pretty significant favorites. And then on the other side, they've got Loyola Marymount and Oregon State. You got an 8 seed and a 12 seed. Literally, the Cougars basketball team has a path to the Final Four that consists of an 11 seed, a 12 seed, and an 8 seed. I don't know that Coach Kelvin Sampson could have asked for it to be set up any more beautiful for his Cougars team to make a run to the Final Four. And I tell you what you can do out there is you can listen to Payne and Pendergast in the morning. At 9:35 a.m., they're going to have Cougar head basketball coach Kelvin Sampson on their show. 9:35 a.m., he'll preview Saturday's Sweet 16 matchup against Syracuse, that 11-seed Syracuse. And Sports Radio 610, they're the home. We are, not they are. We are the home of the NCAA tournament. So guess what? Saturday night, Houston versus Syracuse. They'll tip off at 8:55 p.m. right here on Sports Radio 610. Who you taking in that one, Smitty?
U of H, no question. They're going to win that. They're going to hit their shots to beat that zone, because if you can hit the shots against the Syracuse zone, you get the W. I think the Houston Cougars are going to be on point as far as shooting the ball from the outside, and that's going to be the difference. They'll make it to the Elite Eight.
I'm with you. I want everybody out there, make sure you wear your red tomorrow. That's to support U of H Cougar basketball. T-Mill, appreciate you. Good job today, baby. Smitty, always fun when you join us here at Sports Radio 610. And for my man Ron the Show Hughley, Houston, we love you, baby. Me and Cougars light and jump off in this pool.
All right, showtime. You ready?
Born ready.
Great. Did you bring the dongle?
What's a dongle?
Never mind. We'll just show them on your laptop.
I was supposed to bring my laptop?
Don't panic. You shared the presentation with me, right?
I forgot.
Well, if you log in, then we can...
My password. I was about to say I forgot my password.
You ordered the food through EasyCater, right?
Yes?
We'll be fine.
Food can make or break a presentation, so make sure you order at EasyCater.com. Individually packaged food delivered right on time. How? EasyCater.
Odyssey now has hundreds of new exclusive music stations for you to discover your new summer soundtrack.
Get moving with worthy workouts for a cardio sesh fueled by today's top artists.
Hanging with your crew? Throw it back with Picnic Party for old school jams for your cookout.
Or sail away with Odyssey's new yacht rock station, Jugger Yacht.
There are hundreds of new exclusive stations to check out today.
For summer barbecues,
road trips,
or relaxing poolside.
For every mood, every interest, every passion. By Odyssey. Brought to you in part by Macy's and Geico.